What's up Age fans, this is Age of Empires Tips and welcome back to a brand new Civilization overview video. It's been a while, I know, but this is quite a long one, so hopefully that makes up for it. This time around we'll be looking at the Greek civilization. Let's see what they have to offer and what their bonuses, strengths and weaknesses are. As I said, it's going to be quite a long one, so let's dive straight into it. Starting off with the history of ancient Greece. As you may know, ancient Greece has a long and rich history, so let's see what it's all about. When we talk about ancient Greece, we are not actually talking about Greece as it looks like today. We can't really speak of a unified ancient Greek empire either. Instead, when we talk about ancient Greece, we are really talking about a collection of city-states that shared a similar culture, religion and language in the Mediterranean region that we currently call Greece. Ancient Greece can be divided into several different eras, starting with the Mycenaean period. The Mycenaeans built big cities such as Mycenae, Thebes and Athens. The Mycenaeans soon set foot on Crete and conquered the Minoans. It is here that tablets were found that contained texts that later turned out to be the earliest known form of Greek language. With control over the Mediterranean, the prosperity of the Mycenaean city-states grew. At around the 12th century BCE, the famous Battle of Troy happened, as it is depicted by Homer's Iliad, one of Homer's most famous works today. After a 10-year siege, Odysseus tricked Troy by building a giant wooden horse as a present for Troy. The people of Troy brought in the horse, thinking that the Greeks had retreated, but actually, the Greek soldiers were hiding inside the horse and waited for night to come before coming out, and then easily conquered the city. Did this all exactly happen like this? Well, probably not. The war with Troy probably did happen, but the story of the horse is likely just a myth. I mean, Homer wrote about some other pretty dubious things after all, and Homer wasn't quite there to witness the event. Actually, he wasn't even alive when the war took place. Homer lived like 400 years after the Trojan War. Homer himself is actually shrouded in mystery. For instance, we don't really know whether Homer refers to a single person or a group of people. But that's another story. For now, let's just continue with our journey. At around 1200 BCE, the Late Bronze Age collapse happened. The Mycenaean Greeks were not spared from this. One possibility for the Mycenaean decline is attacks by the Dorians from the north and invasions from a mysterious group of people called the Sea People from the south. The latter also caused major havoc in other parts of the Mediterranean and Mesopotamia, such as Egypt, but we're still not entirely sure what exactly caused the decline of the Mycenaean Greeks. What followed were 400 years of pretty much nothing, also known as the Dark Age. Very little written accounts are found of this period. Since this period is kind of boring compared to the rest, we'll go straight into the next phase of Greek history. After the Dark Ages, the Archaic Period emerged. This is the time where Homer's Iliad and Odyssey were actually written. Archaic Greece was once again no unified empire with proper borders, but a collection of city-states, or poleis as they were called. The different city-states established many colonies around the Mediterranean and beyond. Colonies were established as far as in modern-day Russia and France. These colonies were used to gain raw materials and farmland, as both of these were pretty scarce on Greek mainland. Some city-states kind of stood out from the rest, Sparta and Athens in particular. In Athens, after many years of tyranny by different aristocrats, democracy was founded, which forms the foundation for many democratic societies today. Sparta, meanwhile, took a very different approach. Growing up in this polis was a hardship as this society revolved around military. Spartan men were raised to be ruthless soldiers, even in times of peace. By around 800 BCE, Sparta had conquered most of the neighboring areas, making it a major and one of the most influential polis in all of Greece. The citizens of these neighboring states, commonly called helots, were not treated very well by the Spartans, to say the least. Being treated as semi-slaves, uprisings were common. Around 550 BCE, there were the Persians under the rule of Darius I. They appeared from the east, and soon enough, the prosperous Ionian cities, located on the west coast of modern-day Turkey, were conquered by the Persians. An invasion of the Greek mainland soon followed. This urged the rivaling Greek city-states to collaborate and defend against this common threat. Even though the Greeks were heavily outnumbered, they managed to hold back the Persians quite successfully. The famous Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE marked the first victory of Greece, partly due to the phalanx formation, a square formation of heavily armored hoplites that was very hard to break. Even though heavily outnumbered, the phalanxes were able to hold back the Persian invaders in the middle, while other troops surprised the Persian invaders on the flanks and the rear, causing panic, and as a result suffered heavy losses. The defeat of the Persians was big news and caused some dude to run 42 point something kilometers in order to bring the good news to Athens. Thanks to him, we now have this sports event called the Marathon. What a guy. Apparently, he dropped dead upon arriving in Athens. The Persians tried it again in 480 BC under the rule of Xerxes. This time, they faced the famous King Leonidas of Sparta at the Battle of Thermopylae. He allegedly led an army of 300 Spartans, even though he was helped by thousands of men from other Greek city-states. This battle is so famous that they even made a movie of it. The 2007 movie The 300 is devoted entirely to this event, though this movie is not known for its historical accuracy. For instance, this is Xerxes as is depicted by the 2007 movie The 300. Although he probably didn't really look like a crossover between a high-end male stripper and a decorated Christmas tree. He actually looked more like this, probably pretty short and had a beard. Anyway, more about the historical inaccuracies of this movie later. Still a great movie though. By the way, Sparta had like 8,000 men available, but they only bothered to send 300. This was because the most important religious festival of Sparta also took place at the same time, during which it was forbidden to fight. Hey Sparta, the Persians are coming. Shouldn't we do something about it? Dude, we're kind of busy right now, so could you come back later please? But there's like 80,000 of them. Alright, well in that case 300 will do I guess. Man, these Spartans truly were something else. Anyway, the small mountain pass did not favor the Persian style of battle with light archers and cavalry. And even though heavily outnumbered, the Greeks were able to hold back the Persians initially. The Greek soldiers were much better trained and much more disciplined, especially in this type of combat and terrain. But despite their efforts, the invaders eventually prevailed and Leonidas and his army were killed in battle. But the Persian success came at a great cost, as tens of thousands of Persian soldiers were killed in battle. The Persians were able to conquer most of the Greek city-states, including Athens. Eventually, however, the Greek city-states launched a massive counterattack from the south, including a massive sea campaign using some 300 triremes, ending the Persian reign over Greek and leading Greece into the classical era. With Athens at its center, this is the era of great Greek contributions to science, politics, literature and architecture from figures like Plato and Aristotle. Great buildings such as the Parthenon were also constructed during this time. Even Athens and Sparta were at peace, for a little while at least. Athens' prosperity didn't go unnoticed, and this eventually led to hostility from Sparta and its allies towards Athens. What followed was a Spartan invasion of Athens as part of the Peloponnesian Wars, starting around 431 BC. After this, most of the Greek city-states fell into a decline. A new empire in the north, the Macedonians, were on the rise and soon reigned over mainland Greece. There was also this one talented guy who was worthy of Aristotle's wisdom as he was his scholar, called Alexander the Great, who would later conquer like half of Asia. That's pretty much where this ends, as I feel the story of Alexander the Great belongs in the Macedonian Civilization Overview. Greece has a rich history and would leave its mark later on the Roman Empire and even today's society. Anyway, that concludes the history of ancient Greece in the context of this video. So let's continue with the representation of ancient Greece in Age of Empires. Starting off with their civilization bonuses. Their first civilization bonus is that their ships move 20% faster. Let's start off with the historical justification for this bonus. The ancient Greeks were well known for their naval warfare in the Mediterranean Sea. In particular, Athens had the most powerful navy in the eastern Mediterranean during the 400s BC. After the defeat of the Persian fleet at the Battle of Salamis in 4080 BC, some Greek city-states formed an alliance called the Delian League, which was dominated by Athens. This also contributed to the maritime power of the Greeks. The historical justification for this bonus is actually quite clear. Alright, now that that is out of the way, let's talk about the actual bonus and how it affects your games. In the original game, this bonus only applies to warships, but in the definitive edition, fishing boats and fishing ships also benefit from this bonus. Now this may seem like a nice economy bonus for your fishing boats on a water map with a lot of fish, but how effective is it really? Well, first, let's take a look at the numbers. Regular fishing boats move at a speed of 1.4 tiles per second. Fishing ships move at a speed of 2 tiles per second. Greek fishing ships are 20% faster, which means that their fishing boats move at a speed of 1.68 tiles per second, and their fishing ships move at a speed of 2.4 tiles per second. Both fishing ships and fishing boats collect food at the same rate at 2/5 food per second, which means that it takes 37.5 seconds for a fishing boat to collect 15 food, and 50 seconds for a fishing ship to collect 20 food. The biggest problem with the speed bonus is that most of the time is actually spent gathering the fish, unless the fish is really far away. So the speed bonus really only matters for fish that is very far away from your dock. So let's quickly look at a theoretical example. This expression tells us how much food we can gather in a given amount of time, with one fishing boat. Here, R represents the food collection rate, V represents the speed of the fishing boat, and D represents the distance in tiles away from the dock. From this we can create two different expressions, one for Greek and one for non-Greek civilizations. Now let's suppose we want to gather food using one fishing boat for 30 minutes. Let's see how much food we can gather within this time at different distances. As you can see, as the distance increases, the Greek fishing boat is able to gather more food than the non-Greek fishing boat. But even at 30 tiles away, the difference is only about 8.5%. Seems significant? Well, not really. First, if you are fishing at 30 tiles away, then either you are doing something really wrong during your build-up, or the game has progressed so far that getting a lot of food fast probably is the least of your concerns. Ideally, you will usually build your dock right next to one or two patches of fish. So the distance here is pretty much zero and the bonus is irrelevant. Obviously, these patches will be empty quite soon and you will have to move on to fish that is farther away. But usually this is still within reasonable distance from your dock. Say anywhere from 5 to 10 tiles away. At this distance, Greek fishing boats collect food only about 4% faster at most than fishing boats from other civilizations. And very rarely will you be getting fish from more than 10 tiles away during the early game or even middle game, where this bonus could have the biggest impact. Oftentimes you can and you should make new docks right next to some fish once the fish close to your earlier docks runs out. One could argue that Greek could postpone building new docks for a little while at least, in order to save some wood. But honestly, I really would not change my redocking attitude with Greek. If you feel like you need a new dock because your fishing boats have to take too much time going back and forth, just make a new dock, regardless of the civilization that you're playing with. It will pretty much always be beneficial if you have some wood to spare. Now obviously, you won't be using just one fishing boat to collect food, but you will create more and more fishing boats as time progresses. Obviously, this does change the numbers a bit, but it mainly just scales up the figures. But the percentual difference remains the same. Now keep in mind that this is all theory, considering that in practice fishing boats will bump into each other and need to maneuver around each other. And this problem increases as the number of fishing boats increases. You can of course improve this with a little bit of micromanagement, but unless you want to play Age of Fishing Boat Simulator, you will inevitably have this issue. Age of Empires is also, after all, a game of priorities, where you have to prioritize what is important in order to maximize the advantage over your opponent. For a final practical review of the bonus, I did a little experiment where I recorded the time it takes to collect 500 food with 10 fishing boats, and compared Greek with another civilization. This is of course more interesting to look at as it depicts a more realistic scenario. I repeated the experiment 20 times for each civilization, and the results can be seen in the following histogram. And for those of you that are interested, here's the same figure, but with the estimated normal distribution curves of each sample drawn on top of it. In this situation, the average time it took for the non-Greek fishing boats to collect 500 food was 218.05 seconds, while for Greek fishing boats it was 204.95 seconds. A difference of about 14 seconds, or about 6%. While this is not insignificant, I don't think that this is enough to justify completely altering your playing style as Greek. So far we've only covered fishing boats. What about fishing ships? Well, all that I said about fishing boats pretty much applies to fishing ships as well. Yes, the absolute speed difference is larger since the base speed of fishing boats is larger, but this is offset by the fact that fishing ships can collect 5 more food and thus spend more time collecting the food rather than going back and forth. So the numbers do work out differently, but the difference between Greek and the other civilizations is still very small at short distances. The bonus does of course add up over time, but as the game progresses, you should start making more farms, as this is simply a faster way to get food. And when you finally are fishing at 30 tiles away, because you are squeezing the last bit of fish out of the sea that is left available, food probably isn't an issue anymore. All in all, I would say that the Greek faster fishing ships is a small economical bonus that works in the background to give you that little extra boost. I wouldn't really change my strategy for it, but it's really nice to have and it might give you a small advantage over your opponent. And now that I've spent way too much time on the economical side of the bonus, let's take a look at its military use. While Greek fishing boats are still not as fast as regular warships, the faster speed allows them to escape danger on water much more easily. If you rely a lot on fish for your food income, this is actually quite an advantage, as it allows you to save your fishing boats more easily in case you get attacked on water early on in the game. Greek fishing ships are actually faster than any warship, including fire galleys. Offensively, the faster warships allow your attacks to be much more mobile. Dodging enemy attacks and remaneuvering your boats is just easier. The faster scout ships and war galleys are so much faster than regular fishing boats that they can track down and decimate groups of fleeing fishing boats much faster, making them an ideal naval rush civilization. Greek also gets catapult triremes. As these boats are quite slow, this bonus helps them to get out of sticky situations if necessary. This is especially helpful because these boats are also quite gold intensive. The bonus helps them to become a little bit more mobile. Finally, with the latest patch, Greek now also gets fire galleys, which means Greek gets the fastest warships in the entire game by far. And I dare say that the speed bonus actually has the biggest impact on these fire galleys, because it's a unit that relies on getting close in order to do a lot of damage. And Greek fire galleys can do a lot of damage, especially to an unprepared opponent. All in all, it is a nice bonus on water maps, certainly more useful than in the original, where it affects only military ships. The small economy bonus of the faster fishing ships is certainly nice to have on top of the more aggressive, faster Greek military ships. And I think this water bonus is underestimated by a lot of players. It's still probably one of the weaker water bonuses, but it's certainly useful. Now the second and third bonus of Greek is that their academy units are 20% cheaper and move 30% faster. Since these bonuses concern the same unit, I will cover them together. Again, let's start off with some historical justification. Hoplites were the elite forces of the ancient Greeks. They were heavily armored warriors, usually armed with spears and shields. As it is correctly depicted in the 2006 movie 300, Hoplites were both ferocious warriors and supermodels at the same time, as they all had six-pack abs and pretty much fought naked in weird-looking speedos. Most likely they had a men's physique competition before the battle, but didn't have time to change. It's actually surprising how having no armor wasn't a huge disadvantage. But if the enemy fights like this though, well, it probably doesn't really matter anyway. Needless to say, this movie isn't quite historically accurate. Anyway, back to the game. It is actually kind of funny that hoplites are a common unit in a game, but were actually of Greek origin. Even stranger is that the upgrade of this unit is called a phalanx, even though this is the name of the square battle formation that was usually used by hoplites. Then again, this is the same game where buildings light on fire by hitting it with a wooden stick. In any case, hoplites and phalanx formations were used by other civilizations as well, such as the Macedonians, who perfected them. But eventually, they fell out of favor. Still, the Greeks were the first to use it and actually achieved some great victories with them. So what are gameplay-wise the implications of these bonuses? Well, the cost reduction was actually introduced as a new bonus for Greek in the definitive edition, which gives the Greek Academy a nice bonus. Together with the overall cost reduction of the Academy building to 150 wood in the definitive edition, compared to 200 in the original, Greek probably is the only civilization that can successfully rush using hoplites. The cheaper costs allow you to produce them faster, while the movement speed just increases the speed of the overall rush. Greek hoplite rushes can be deadly if executed correctly. They can kill villagers pretty quickly while they don't yet have wheel, and can easily defend against any cavalry unit. They are still weak against archers, but they can close in faster, so the archer player requires more micromanagement to properly defend themselves. Plus, it's always a good idea to back up your infantry rushes with towers and slingers, so it becomes much harder for the enemy archers to simply hit and run on your hoplites. Now let's move on to their fourth bonus, which was added very recently actually. And their fourth bonus is that town centers work 10% faster, starting from the Tool Age. Now this bonus probably reflects the rapid population growth of the Greek city-states during the Archaic Period. Now this applies to both making villagers and aging up. Now this bonus would in fact be pretty strong if it started from the Stone Age. However, it only starts from the Tool Age, which makes it a bit less effective. So how effective is it really? Let's find out. But how can we quantify this in a meaningful way? I could just run an experiment a bunch of times, but this would be somewhat time consuming and tedious. So why don't we just imagine a hypothetical situation and see where we can get from there? Okay, so let's imagine the following. We start in the Tool Age with 20 villagers. Now, we immediately use those villagers to start gathering food from berry bushes. Suppose that these berries are right next to their drop-off point, so the drop-off time is 0. Also, let's suppose that these berry bushes yield an infinite amount of food. Also imagine we are constantly creating new villagers until we have 100 villagers, and we never age up in the meantime. From this hypothetical situation, we can quite easily compute how much food we can collect within a certain amount of time. And since Greek can create villagers faster than other civilizations, they should be able to get more. We can then compare the numbers from Greek to any other civilization and get a rough estimate of how useful this bonus really is. Also, I might have to warn you guys, there is some math ahead, even though it's not very complicated, but if you're not interested in that, I will put annotations in the video so you can skip right to the conclusion. Alright, so first off, let's define a function that tells us how many villagers we have at time t. Well, this is fairly straightforward. All we need to do is divide t by the time it takes to create one villager, and then add the amount of villagers you start with, which in our case is 20. Now from this, let's create two separate functions, where one function represents Greek and the other one represents any other civilization. Now, normally, villagers are created in 20 seconds, but Greek villagers are created 10% faster, so it takes Greek only 18 seconds per villager. So this gives us the following two functions for the villager count. One for Greek called v sub g and one for non-Greek called v sub ng. So how fast do these villagers collect food? Well, a villager takes 20 seconds to collect 10 food from berry bushes, which is a half a food per second. Multiply this by the amount of villagers that you have at time step t, and we've got ourselves an expression for the gathering rate at time step t, expressed in food per second. And let's call this function the berry bush collection rate, or R. Now we have to be careful because this allows us to make an arbitrary amount of villagers, but we said in the beginning that we didn't want to go beyond 100 villagers. So let's tweak the function just a little bit. Now this may look a bit complicated, but all it is that if you have less than 100 villagers, use the amount of villagers at time step t. Otherwise, just keep it at 100. We can substitute in the expressions we got earlier for the amount of villagers at time step t, and we've obtained two expressions for the berry bush collection speed, one for Greek and one for non-Greek. The following figure shows the progression of collection rates as a function of time for both Greek and any other civilization. As you can see, because Greek can create villagers faster, it gets ahead in the food collection rate, until the other civilization also reaches 100 villagers and manages to catch up. However, unless the non-Greek civilization makes more than 100 villagers, they will never be able to make up for the additional food that Greek was able to gain during their time where they had more villagers. So how much additional food did Greek gather in this case? Well, if these curves represent food gathering rate, then the area under these curves represent the total food gathered. And in that case, the difference in the total amount of food gathered will be the difference between these two areas, which is equal to this shaded area. We are interested in the area under the curve from 0 to t is equal to 1600 seconds, which is the time at which the non-Greek civilization reaches 100 villagers. We can then compute the area under each curve by computing the definite integral of each curve and then subtracting them. So once we've integrated both of these functions from 0 to 1600 and subtracted them, we obtain a total difference in food collected of 30 to 100, which amounts to about 6.45%. But we can also just subtract the indefinite integrals to obtain the following curves, which shows us the total difference in food as time progresses. As you can see, it increases steadily until it reaches 30 to 100, after which it remains constant. Now this final figure shows the percentile difference over time of the previous figure, and as you can see, it steadily increases until it reaches 6.45%, after which it slowly drops again. Now it is a bit difficult to draw conclusions from this hypothetical example to an actual game, but I think 6.45% is a reasonable estimate on the maximum benefit that you're gaining from this bonus in an actual game. What this analysis has shown us, however, is that you get the most benefit from this bonus while you are booming up to your maximum amount of villagers. So this will probably be towards the entire Bronze Age and up until the early Iron Age. During this time, your economy has the potential to be a little bit better than that of your opponents, until of course they manage to catch up, after which the effect of the bonus really diminishes. So if you want to make the most of this bonus, just make sure that they never catch up to you. Also keep in mind that Greek also ages up faster to the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, so if you're a player that likes to attack early on in the Bronze Age or likes to go for a quick Iron Age, this will definitely benefit you. Anyway, further investigation of this bonus probably deserves a video of its own, so I'm not going to spend any more time on this right now. All I can say now is that I think that it is a solid bonus, but the circumstances and your playing style really determine how effective this bonus really is. So try to use this bonus to your advantage as much as possible. Anyway, that's it for the Greek Civilization bonuses, a nice mix of cool military bonuses together with some nice economic boosts. Anyway, let's move on to their technology tree. Starting at their barracks. Pretty sad story here, they do get slingers but nothing beyond short swordsmen. They do get all the upgrades though, except for metallurgy, and the slingers are a great addition to your hoplite army. They probably have the worst barracks in the game, therefore I'm giving the Greek barracks 1 out of 5 points. Next up is the Greek archery, and this is also pretty sad. They get nothing besides the Tool Age bowmen, and while they do get all upgrades, they're pretty much useless beyond the Tool Age. So yeah, needless to say, the Greeks have by far the worst archery in the entire game. Truth hurts. So that's why I'm giving them 1 out of 5 points. Next up is the Greek stable, which is also pretty bad. They don't get chariots, camels, elephants or cataphracts. They do get all upgrades, except for the Iron Age +3 attack. Sadly, I can do nothing else but give only 1 point to the Greek stable. I know I gave the Minoans 2 points for their stable units, but I do value camels in the Bronze Age more than I do heavy cavalry in the Iron Age, especially if they can be fully upgraded. So far, it has been pretty sad for the Greeks, but let's move to an area where they excel at. Let's look at their academy. Because of their speed and cost bonus, I do think that the Greek academy is the strongest in the entire game, even without the Iron Age attack upgrade. Very good for rushing in the early Bronze Age, and in the Iron Age, a group of centurions can truly be devastating. The Greek academy gets 5 out of 5 points. Next up is the Greek siege workshop. Also very good. They get both siege engines and both can be fully upgraded. They are definitely a top tier siege civilization, but they don't get any bonuses, that's why I'm giving them 4 out of 5 points. Moving on to the Greek temple now. It is pretty good, they do get most of the upgrades, especially the most important ones, but they don't get any bonuses, so I'd say they're pretty average. It is a shame priests aren't that popular in multiplayer play, but it can actually sometimes be useful, especially in healing your gold intensive troops. Moving on to their navy. The Greek navy is pretty strong, representing their historical dominance on the Mediterranean Sea. They get fully upgraded triremes and juggernauts, and in combination with their speed bonus, they are very strong. I won't say that they're the very best water civilization, but they are definitely on top. I'm giving the Greek navy 4 out of 5 points. Moving on to Greek defenses now. Pretty solid. They get ballista tower and fortification. Also they get architecture, so they get some extra HP on their structures. Their ballista towers can be fully upgraded, so that's pretty good. But sadly they don't get any bonuses, so that's why I am giving them 4 out of 5 points for their defenses. Finally, let's take a look at their economy. Their economy is pretty good. They get all the upgrades. They also have both their fishing boat bonus and their faster town center, which really helps as well. Economy-wise, they are a little bit better on water maps, but still overall, I'm giving them 4 out of 5 points. With the Greeks, you can enjoy a very solid economy. That's it regarding the Greek tech tree. A pretty narrow technology tree, especially in the Bronze Age. They don't have very many options, which is why many people agree that Greek is one of the weakest civilizations in the game. And this is quite reasonable, as hoplites aren't really that popular of a unit in the Bronze Age, so you're pretty much left with cavalry as your main Bronze Age unit. They are much stronger in the Iron Age, where they have access to one of the best siege in the game, on top of their pretty strong centurions. But there's no denying in the fact that their lack of any decent archery is a serious disadvantage. However, I actually quite enjoy playing as Greek, especially since most people won't expect a hoplite rush, even if you are playing as Greek. And they can actually be quite devastating as well, if executed properly. Use slingers and towers to back up your hoplite rush, and you've got yourself a solid Bronze Age strategy. And if this is not really your thing, you can still do a cavalry rush. Once you hit the Iron Age with Greek, you should either go for mass centurions or go heavy on siege, or a combination of both. Back up your army with ballista towers, and most likely you will do just fine in the Iron Age. If your primary unit in the Bronze Age was cavalry and you still have plenty left, you should also consider upgrading them to heavy cavalry. Anyway, that's it for the Greek Civilization overview. I hope you all liked it, let me know what you think, and I will see you guys in the next video.